Welcome everybody. The purpose, we're going to spend the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes with a couple of Q&As, plus just take you through some of the new stuff that we've been pushing out on the Build platform. Okay. We had a session last week, well, 2 weeks ago with this, with this group, and we've taken some of those suggestions and hopefully sort of bring that closer to reality as part of being part of the community. So I'm going to jump right into it. Okay. Cool. So the focus, it's looking at the Bolt kit. Sorry, just get my... Okay. A couple of things to point out, no particular order, but I'm going to just highlight, and then when you install the new version of the VS Code by this evening, you'll see the same sort of picture. So this is in pre-release mode. So you'll see these coming through in the next 24 hours. The first thing I want to touch on is, some of you may have seen things like glass mode. One of the mindsets, or the things that, Build does a lot of things under the hood. And you can imagine you don't always need to look at or touch it, but you can look at it. You can actually get a very detailed understanding of what just happened. So we're going to be introducing all these, in the define step, in the Build step, in the deploy step, actually what happens under the hood, for those who are curious. It's not a requirement, but it's just a kind of a visual trigger. And practically what it is, you'll see these kind of buttons spread across, when you run a define. So we're going to quickly give you a quick demo of this. So I'm going to run a define on a particular neuron, and while that kicks off, so this is all normal. And I think, Mpho, you had the question of just, understanding under the hood some of these things, and that's really kind of sort of targeting that question. So at the moment, it's very normal vanilla, sort of define sort of events on the platform. But at the end, once it's all done, you can see there's a little glass mode. Okay, so if I click on that, and glass mode is context specific. So if I click on that, it's just, okay, cool, what just happened? If that makes sense. And it will give you effectively, what we did in the define step, we just locked in the proto definitions. This is what's done. This is the source. You could open up the actual differences, the sort of the diff of that. Look at the different artifacts. The thing that we do under the hood, the fact that spanner database schemas are generated, you can go and you can see the schemas. You can go to the database in Spanner and see what that looks like. So it's just a visibility lens across everything that we do. Golang, some of you might, these things might look quite familiar. That's where it came from. This is how it was generated. This is a concept. Here's an example of actually if you want to use it outside of Build or just play around with. Okay, so we'll continue review and refine and enhance these sort of, let's call it glass mode, like a factory of glass walls. You can see what's in there, but you can't really touch it yet. Okay, cool. That's sort of the glass mode. The second thing we're introducing is our official MCP server for those who are using coding agents. And in the Build kit, you'll see there's a Alice Build MCP server. If you click on it, it'll take you through actually where it's sitting, where it's where you can get access to it. If you want to start using them in your different coding environments, there's the installation instructions. And then just a bit of detail on what this thing does, at the moment. Very vanilla MCP. We also have our official Build agent, which goes to sort of a console UI. So if I go there, you'll be able to interact with the Build agent via the console. So I'll show you this. This is what this looks like. So I've asked reviewed, particular products. So it will bring up my neurons, my environments based on a certain prompts. But it's really the same sort of interaction via a normal UI. Now, just going back to the extension. Is this not this guy? So that's like a visual UI. Sometimes it's quite a quick, easy way to just quickly check something, check deployment logs, summarize any build failures, give me a land, what do I have access to, etc. So that's MCP, that's build agent. Now, and that brings me to Alice, the plugin mindset. Now, plugins in these ecosystems are actually, I don't know if some of you've sort of experienced or played with it, but it's a combination of skills, tools, MCP, prompts, commands, webhooks. It basically is a way to, a lot of these providers are starting to bundle things together. Okay. So the recommendation would be is you actually just start with a plug. You use a plugin. The plugin is easily installable, and it installs within a particular environment. It installs all the sort of the integrations that with a particular platform. So we could go. Let's go, for example, Claude Code. The commands here are geared towards how you would set up almost like a one-click in Claude. How we get started. MCPs, as an example, needs configuration, needs to set up. So this is kind of the one-click dummy version of getting the thing in and out. Okay, so you can either copy the command or just run it directly in the terminal. So I'm going to click that. This is using Claude's marketplace sort of gig, installing it and then authenticating. Now, if you haven't authenticated, it will pop up a window and say, please log in with your build account. I've already done that. So if I go MCP here, you'll see there's a Alice Build plugin sort of connected. Okay. And you can click uninstall if you want to remove it. And the same with all these others. So one click, Gemini talks about extensions. It's the same concept. It's bundling all these things together. Open Code also talks about plugins, okay. And Codex. Codex talks about plugins. Then what you can do, we could, there's a couple of just sample prompts that you could try out. So let's try this out. So let's say, let's just go exit this. And let's say we're going to go, let's do this one. So show me who I'm at, give me, I mean, you could look at you'll also look at these samples. But this is now obviously doing all the sort of the underlying logic of getting your landing zones, getting the products, getting bulk logs, getting, whatever is relevant in that world. So the first time you use it, you obviously need to authorize these calls. But over, once you've done that, it becomes simpler. Okay, I'm signing as that. This is my active zones. These are my organizations. I've accessed products, etc. Okay, so it's so it's obviously V1 of the highlights. Like a couple of things on this. Okay. Any questions? There's a question, James. Yeah.
I got a question because this is exciting. Do you have a kind of scenario yet where kind of in the development flow we can use these plugins?
Yeah, so
either like in a service or in a front end.
You mean executing or?
Yeah, executing. So like while, like I think what I'm looking for is if I'm using one of these tools to develop, do you have a adding a field to a proto or?
Oh yeah, so check, this is a, let's say something fell. I think there was a failure here with this. I might be wrong. Yeah, I think there was a failure, okay. So this would like it's obviously aware of the neuron where you are. So it's, and sort of the context. Let's just check this one.
So it's not yet, plugin isn't yet at the point where it's useful in the actual development flow, like I'm building a service or a front
No,
end.
I can show you now. So this is now,
Okay.
this is now. So it picked up that there's a failed build uses V1. And now it starts going into the actual beef where, okay, cool. Like, let's look at the logs of that failure. And obviously, look at the deploy logs.
Okay, so this is actually going to go to the build deploy logs. That's
Yeah,
really
it's all sort of connected. So, okay. And that's interesting.
99% of the time that's a
Yeah, that's
missing
right.
environmental variable.
Yeah, so that's these logs you might, that's obviously came back from the, probably some env, but I don't know. Like it's these are obviously when you go to your logs, you'll see all the logs coming through. But it's, let's just, Tom, while it's running, yes.
Are we also able to look at Cloud Run logs of the different neurons?
We spoke about that. The way we would do, and I'll go to skills. The skills is where some skills can span across MCP, our MCP plus Google Cloud MCP. And then that's scenario you would be able to, because it does point.
Okay, because we know the Google Cloud, the neuron, any particular service, Cloud Run name, and you could say Google Cloud MCP, go get, okay.
Oh, so check this one. This one is the cause is the Cloud Tasks. Cloud Tasks doesn't have a Europe West 4 region. Just, I don't know, just fix it. Yeah, Europe West 1. Yeah. And that's when I obviously sort of start bringing in commits. There we go. Yeah, there we go. It like defaults to, if the Cloud Task, this is a Cloud Task queue. So if it's in this case, Europe West 4, South Africa South 1, just default to Europe West 1 because Cloud Task doesn't exist in Europe. So that's, so I'm just like, cool.
That's pretty magical.
There we go. That's the fix.
That's really impressive. Do you have a service up where we could do like a, add a field to a proto?
So we can
Cloud Run.
Yeah, we can. So I've got. I'll get into that just now, and we've got. I mean, the sort of the sky's the limit. Like what can happen with these things now, and it's pretty performant. It's been. So James, I'm gonna answer that question with another sort of just pointer that makes sense. Okay. Cool. So we've got obviously these plugins, and these plugins are not just MCPs. We're going to be adding context of where you are, what you're looking at, from a build point of view. So you don't waste tokens on searching folders to find a proto. If you know you need this proto, you know that's the proto file, that's the define, these are the infra files. Don't spend searching file folders, tokens to get. So the idea is also, because there's a bit of structure around this thing, you'll spend less tokens on, in aggregate, because the obvious stuff is super obvious. And what's really nice about these plugins is these hooks that you can hook before you actually start the session. So before I open a sort of a terminal, it can actually like set the scene and then off you go. Okay, so it should feel like, install the plugin, it should feel like a bit like magic. Cool. So that's plugins. I'm going to link that up now to Alice Bolt skills. So what we've got, if you go there, you'll go to a public repo that's got skills. That's our Alice Bolt skills, engineering skills sort of available. Now, if you want to, it's a very standard, all these big organizations have it. So it's nothing weird. But practically, it kind of looks like this. You've got a skills folder, and under the skills folder, you've got these different engineering skills. So, and the particular one is these ADK type of skills, where you add tools, you add functionality to agents. Is interesting. And this is where it will create, if you add a tool, it will create the proto, create the, go through that flow. And the idea is these are public open, so they will allow pull requests for any enhancements or changes or things that work to get collectively a better skill. At the moment, it's our best attempt on day one, but these things are going to get better. Okay, so that's sort of skills. Now our MCP hooks up to these skills. The minute these changes, how do our build agent or MCP or plugins get access to the newest version of this? And that brings me to my next point with, should have shortcuts for this stuff. Is what we put down a code block for that as well. So if you and your team, again, Patrick and, like Paul and sort of guys, if you want a certain set of skills propagated to your dev team or a particular product or to your agents that you build for in your product, so, whether you share it with the world or just a very dedicated team, there's a new product that came out, part of the Google ecosystem, which is called Skill Registry. Okay. Bottom line, it's a very vanilla database that with some key methods plus a retrievals method. So in other words, as your skills building up, it's not just text-based search, it's like a semantic search to figure out what skills could be relevant, and that becomes then. So what we did is we set up a skills code block to help you with that. And a very basically what it does, a skill is obviously just a folder of stuff. Okay, a skill has got a markdown, it's got some scripts, references, assets, very vanilla. And there's a skills standard, so you can go and look at sort of skills standard. Now, what this particular flow does is really just a synchronization with any time the repo changes, there's a synchronization happening, which means repo change, a new pull request is accepted, whether it's internal, external, get all that information are effectively zipped up and pushed into the official skills registry in your deployment. So if you have a dev deployment, if you have a prod deployment, each have their own skills registry, if that makes sense. And with this, we then put down basically we implement a skills service where you can use to add as tools. You guys still following? So you've got a repo, you've got a way to synchronize the skills with the repo, and then we have these prompts that you can add that skill that I've just created service to my MCP server or my agent, or consume it via normal gRPC, like service. So it's just yeah. So you don't have to necessarily worry about like downloading. I mean, you can still, if it's publicly available, GitHub sort of normal skills, npx install skills, but it does allow your MCP servers to retrieve the skills before it actually calls a tool. So this sort of mindset, there's different architectures of how you can set up skills, but the one route is you dynamically load the skill as part of your tools, and that skill defines, okay, cool, I'm going to use the tool in this format. Does it make sense? So there's quite a nice sweet spot with that. And we suspect that under the hood is backed by Vertex AI search. In other words, the retrieval gig is quite solid. It's not just looking at skill top level, it's actually looking at your references, your assets, everything under the hood to figure out, hang on, this might be useful. So if your description is not perfect at the top level, the retrieval can still look at these underlying objects and sort of content, which is kind of a big deal, because if your description misses something, but there's a reference that's relevant, you want to kind of. Okay, so that's as a sort of installable code block. Just looking at time, the other thing that you'll see is an agent. There's a base agent that we put down, and again, once you have the base agent, we've got these sample prompts where you could have, I have some skills. Let's add skills to my agent. So the base agent is the world's simplest agent. It's a main.go with almost nothing in it, with a core harness. The mindset is then, okay, I need AG UI to that. There's a skill that will slap that on. I need a scheduler to my agent. It's a skill that will put that down. Long running. If you have a long running sort of tool that needs polling with the LRO pattern and stuff, that whole webhook sort of cloud task driven long running stuff. Again, that same sort of. Yeah. Then, cool. So we've gone through this last load. We've gone through these. Then I want to introduce our sort of next version of our private Git. Okay, so in a nutshell, what it is, we're going to be hosting it. We're deploying an instance of, I don't know how you pronounce it, but Forgio. Daniel, help me here. But
Forge. Well, I also think it's Forgio.
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask Daniel to share and basically what that looks like. On a super practical level, it's a private Git within your organization, exactly like it is at the moment, but with like way more sort of features and capabilities. Things like pull requests and issue trackers and all the sort of native Git stuff now is going to live in your org, in your normal. And we're busy with migrating some of the orgs. Once your org is migrated, you'll see a little link, and all the Git relevant stuff within the VS Code will actually point to your new Git instance, if that makes sense. But all the history, everything, all of those stuff is migrated. Practically, it's on the same VM. It's just now a different, served from a different application. So this, it's quite an easy move. Daniel, can you share your screen? Just end us with that, yeah. I think you're on mute, huh?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so you can hear me, right? You can see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is now one of our play orgs that we've already moved and stuff over to test. So it's in your org project, it's still the VM that's hosting it, fronted by a Cloud Run that does the auth proxy, similar than before, but just now the base thing is now this Forgio Git server. So which will allow like this, viewing your Git repos in this nice UI with things like analytics on who's been busy with what. Let's see, recent commits or contributors. So yeah, and then even in year, you'll be able to, if you need to make an ad hoc change, like this should feel quite familiar to GitHub. It's not a, yeah, it's not innovating much more than what we used to, but at least, well, from the Alice perspective, it allows us to now see what we've been busy with on a web UI. And then it obviously introduces flows like pull requests and protected branches. And so we'll first just get the base stuff over to allow you to just, like, it will be the same experience, except you'll have this web UI, and then we'll see how we can deal with protected branches and pull requests based on product admins versus product builders, that kind of thing. So yeah, the path seems quite clear. We yeah, this was actually quite straightforward. So yeah, hopefully soon within the next week, this will be the new Git experience for everyone. Yeah.
Go for it. Daniel, just show like editing a file or any, like there's a whole, you know.
Sure. Yeah, let's let's edit this proto. Add a bit of a extra comment or task service. Can't think of a better comment now. Cool. So making a small change in the UI, and immediately it's available as a new commit. Yeah. So yeah, quite yeah, something I think we've all probably been used to on working with GitHub, but now at least in your private world as well, you'll see this. And yeah, when you explore, you'll be able to see all the users in your, and we don't allow, you know, people can't just sign up to your instance. It's locked down. Alice controls the users and the repos and the access control. So someone yeah, can't just sign up and see who's all the users and repos. It's still the same private experience, just I guess a better bit of better visibility. And I think I'm quite excited to see what the yeah, some flows on branches and pull requests could look like. Yeah. Tom?
Will we have one of these per code block? Is that the plan, or still to be discussed?
So it's still like we can do a lot more now, but it's still, for now, V1 is going to be exactly the same what we have. So it's still one repo for your protos in the org, and then one repo for each of your product repos. But yeah, this would then allow potentially, let's say, org admins creating even additional repos for your, I don't know, public Go packages, or a shared place for your, I don't know, Vim configs or
skills.
Yeah.
Like if you want internal skills, not necessarily on GitHub. If internal skills, you'd use that code block example, and that becomes like protected but still synced.
Yeah.
I don't know if my question went through correctly, but would we view code block versions through this interface? Is that
We spoke about that. Not yet, because the code block versions, there's the passing of the information, the sensitive, desensitizing, and the information between different sources. So a slightly different model, but there is maybe something. Maybe there's something. Even as a temporary sort of work tree, kind of, it's there temporary, and you can see and then off. But you would, if you are using code blocks, you would be able to switch a branch like normal, go to the branch, change it, edit it, and then submit that back to a code block. So that the contribution on your branch, because code blocks are really just branches, but in your world, kind of shared with everybody else through the code block mechanism. It's like a distributed branch mindset, I think. Which is
cool.
The other thing is it also opens up a lot of the standard Git APIs, which means that at the moment, a lot of the flow is like you download the repo, make the changes, and you push it up for these agents. And these, like with the APIs, you can actually edit the file in there directly, which means your coding agents, your MCPs, could potentially just make the changes directly on your Git server via the Git API, and not having to worry, clone and update the whole thing, if that makes sense. So,
Oh, so that can make the code experience actually a lot better as well.
way better, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a world where you have a Git MCP that just points to your Git private one to edit a file, view a file, get a file, fix a bug, pull, push.
George?
Mine was a bit of a quick question. Not sure what the Git capabilities would be, but a good example is the way you just made a commit to the proto file. Can I run and generate straight from the repo, or do I have to go through the current process that we normally do to run the define to get the new proto?
So that's a good question. So it will still, the process won't change for how you kick off, define, build, deploy. But this is the V1, right? We will look at, because now we can utilize the webhooks on the repos. So we don't have to limit ourselves to use the actions necessarily to kick off things like that. But we might set up then, a webhook that when you edit protos, you want to, like you say, kick off a define. That does become a flow, but at least for V1, there won't be a change in the workflow. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But there is because it's all sort of cloud-based, then there is a world where you could have on your, a mobile agents like, cool, can you add this field to that proto and just kick off a define for me via a completely separate interface, chat interface. And that will then API Git and then API MCP define, and then,
You can use the Claude mobile app, and it can still code in BBD.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, Jan, there's two questions in the Q&A. One related to the MCP and whether it connects to all tools. Specific use case is if it can get ideas from Ideate Best of a collection. Just that connection between Ideate and the MCP.
Okay, so we're meeting, actually we have a session tomorrow on the Ideate plugin. So plugins is a gig, MCPs are part of plugins. And those are going to be two separate MCPs. In other words, you'll have an Ideate, Alice Ideate, and the Alice Bold MCP. Where it becomes interesting is the skills. The skills span across these MCPs. So you could have a skill of, cool, I need to do this thing. Step one, go to Ideate, fetch the context. Cool, you got the context. Step two, go to Bold, define the proto given that context, etc. So it becomes interesting as you start like skills pointing to different MCPs, including the Google Cloud MCPs. Look at the actual log on Google Cloud, come back, look up the regions, are there any weirdness, etc. So it becomes and that's why the skills are sort of organization, the way where that lives becomes important, because skills span products, spans teams potentially.
Okay. Cool. I think that answers the second question as well.
Yeah, so skills at the product level. So we spoke about like where this thing lives. Now, Google Skills, I think the flavor here is you go Google a skills repository, which is enabled by default with every Google project. So every deployment has got one skill registry. And you don't have namespaces, it's one or not. It's like list skills, you get all the skills for that project. So it's really up to you how you want to structure that. We're not going to be putting down a skills repo in products and one in orgs and in that. If you need skills for your team, put down a neuron, a service, and then enable skills. You might want to sync from more than one repos, like together. You might, yeah.
But can we sync from a 4Go repo
Completely.
to
Yeah. As long as that the entity doing the sync, IO service account's got access to, and we've looked at that access control from service accounts into these private kits.
Just to moderate a little bit, Techbridge still needs to do a presentation, so Madeleine, keep it short so we can keep it there.
Just
You can go ahead.
Are you sure? Okay, cool. Great. If there are any more burning questions on this, because I can see there's quite a bit of interest here, please, you can either still put them in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll collect all of those, and then in my follow-up email, get Jan to answer quite a few of them so you can still feel like they're answered. That could be a better way we could also go around this. Is that good? Okay, cool. Jan, any closing thoughts?
cool. No, it's I'm looking forward to this new way of working. Skills with plugins, with your tool of choice. It's the bold promise is we'll meet you where you're at and not ask you to come to us. And these tools are where you're at. Yeah. There was last questions on. There were questions around bolt specs and time tracking and all those things. We're going to have dedicated bolt sessions after this with some of the bolt partners. We'll unpack some of those things, the need, the use, the value. So bolt specifications, time tracking, those things are things we are going to look at, but we need to get more user feed input before we go on some journey. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Martha.
No, thank you, Jan. That's exciting. So I'll introduce Techbridge. They are a partner with us, and one of the engineers will be showcasing some things. So over to you, Paul and Patrick. Patrick, you can, I suppose, go
I
ahead.
think Patrick is going to be screen sharing.
Okay.
Okay. Give me a second here. All right. I guess just a quick note before I start. I mean, it was a nice presentation by Jan and the team. Felt like a bunch of developer candy. Pretty excited to get them. Especially I saw like everybody agreed the Git stuff is pretty cool. Yeah. So hi guys, my name is Patrick. I work at Techbridge. We build solutions for clients using Alice. And today I want to take you through a brief presentation of how we achieve end-to-end testing on Google Cloud. Walk you through the journey of realizing why you need it in the midst of this in the midst of this season of software engineering where you want to just build fast. And then you are hit with something and you're forced to realize you need to go back to the fundamentals testing. But yeah, so end-to-end testing are how we build real browser test safety for our customer portal as an Alice build partner. Okay, so I'll walk you through an overview of what the problem was. So we have a client, they do luxury yacht tours, and customers go there to browse the yachts and the services that they want to pick, and they quote and they book the charters. Of course, all this is created using the whole product is created via Alice, many Alice neurons and many microservices. Yeah, and that we've been shipping with Alice since the start. Maybe not really the start. There was a point in our journey where we were in a client demo, and I had to do tunneling and send a tunnel from my local laptop to the client. So Alice has greatly improved the process for that. But yeah, so the incident. So we were doing just a routine upgrade of Next, which is what we use for the front end. It was regarding some payment things and some security setup. We wanted to control the third-party scripts that are running on our website. And we did the change and we pushed and we deployed, and everything went well. The unit tests, the unit tests went well. The build was good and everything was good. And we saw that was good. Everything went well. So we had nothing set up to simulate like a real user going through our site. So we did not have visibility on how the real users are going through, are experiencing the product. Usually we have this, we have post-deploy work where you go through the site and check things, but with the amount of work increasing, of course, as a developer, you will miss some areas, and some areas you'll miss to test and see if they're still working well, because the products continue to grow bigger. So we needed something that behaves like a real user on a real deployed site. So the issue, what happened is Google Analytics scripts, HubSpot script, those are the two major scripts that we use on the website to collect analytics from Google and for leads tracking. So all that went down, and even our contact form is from HubSpot. So that went down. So we were blind to new customers coming in, and we didn't know this for quite some time until it was reported to us. So things were really bad since that's revenue being lost daily, when we didn't know this issue was up. So we decided to build the safety nest. Just the industry standard is to, of course, simulate a real user going through some of the core areas that you want to make sure that are working. So that's what we started looking into, building a real browser that works through the funnel on the actual deployed side, because this issue was quite tricky, because locally it was working, and the usual thing we say, it works on my machine. It was definitely working on my machine. Our forms are working. But then you get an issue from the client with the deployed version. And we wanted this to run on the cloud, of course. You don't want to have the developer to be running this locally, especially the many tests running and many agents. Maybe they're running Docker locally on their machine. It's better to just run this on the cloud. So the approach here is they just have a real browser against the real site. This is an example of a case we wanted to test, like the bot that we wanted to have just visits the homepage, searches the listings that are there, configures all the necessary configurations that a normal customer would pick, and then submits all the way to the end. And of course, like we also added the third-party scripts on to check like all the scripts loading, does a contact form load, does the Google script load, and all that. So the next thing was to determine where it runs. We did not want it to run locally. Again, because the issue we found locally, it was working. We needed this to be tested on the deployed version of the site. And we also did not want to mock these things. Mock is where you create like test data, or we wanted this to run on real data. And that is why we deployed it to our staging environment. The early setup for setting up environments is really nice. And you set up the staging environment to emulate production as close as possible. So we could run the test on real data. So the challenge here was, how do you run this reliably and repeatedly on the cloud? So this is the pipeline that we came up with. So you do a git push, of course. Alice deploys the portal from the extension, but on our side, we also do another build that builds our Docker image, our test image that is going to run all the tests. It does basically the same thing that Alice does, publishes to the artifact registry that is on Google Cloud, and once that is published, and then a Cloud Run job is triggered, and that Cloud Run job is the one that actually runs those tests. And we use Playwright. Playwright that runs specifically on the staging URL. Of course, we don't want to be testing on production, or else we'll have fake leads. Yeah. The test suite runs inside of a Cloud Run job, of course, because we want something that is long running. This test takes some time. A container that starts, it works, and then it's done. So just pretty quick, of course, because billing can start being an issue when you have an always on server. So just a quick thing, just spawn the container, run the test, and then the container it closes. Yeah. Of course, or with the whole Google Cloud setup, everything is on all the logs are piped over to Google Cloud logs. The Playwright image is a separate app image, of course, away from our portals, our customer portal. It's a separate image, and it is only for the tests, and that's the only thing it's set up for. Now, the next hard part after we figure that out, the next hard part was authentication, because we want to do this end-to-end test for authenticated routes. So like, for example, a dashboard or a profile page for a customer, we want to make sure that we can run those tests for that. Most of the funnel lives behind the logging. So of course, we encourage users to create an account and log in. And that is where, you really don't want to mess up with a real customer. You want to make sure that the experience within the login, within the dashboard is good. So that's why we really had to figure out how to figure out this authentication. Yeah. So we have protected routes. I had said we did not want to do a mock auth layer where you just simulate authentication again, because that you will miss issues even when you simulate authentication issues. You're no longer testing the real site, you are testing the mock. Then we do not also want to skip the authenticated routes again, because that also is not the real customer experience. We want to emulate a real customer experience. And of course, we do not want to hard code credentials because of security issues. So we needed a real and valid session inside of a headless container. So you're running this container, but you want this container to have a real account of a real user. So here's a bit of code. I won't go into the code, but this is for the technical, for anyone technical here who wants to maybe have a brief through. So using the Alice IAM setup, it was pretty easy to just set up a way to just get the refresh token. So we have a test email account that we created on our organization, and from that email account, we just get the refresh token from that email account. And we store that refresh token on Google Cloud Secret Manager. And that is the refresh token that is used by the tester to always authenticate. So it's a real user, and yeah, we can emulate that. So this is just a bit of us getting the refresh token and the Docker file for the Playwright. I won't go much into depth into that. And towards the end, we wanted an interface to be running this, because most of this was being done in a terminal, very manual. So we are in the progress of creating a small TUI, terminal user interface runner, just something you can run on the terminal that allows you to trigger all these, the cloud build, the submit, the test triggering, the logs and all that. So we are building something to a nice UI for testing. The vision here is to get to something like GitHub Actions. It has a nice UI for showing you the progress of everything. We'd like to see the progress of the tests, which passed, which failed. So that's what we are building. Is still in progress. But yeah, this is just a brief overview of the TUI running. So right now we trigger things manually. So there's no automation. We haven't plugged in yet with Alice to trigger the test automatically before a build or after a build. Yeah. So I'll just brush off the TUI. There's nothing much there because we're still working on it. But right now you can't trigger these processes that we usually do manually on the terminal. So today we trigger this manually. So the GUI, which of course does all of the things that I said, submits the container and runs the test. But the next thing we are working on is wiring this trigger to the Alice deploy event, so that there can be no manual step, because sometimes the developer can forget to do this manual step after they do the deploy. We have some ways we are considering on doing this, and then eventually, as the fields run, we want to connect it up with our Google Chat. We use Google Chat for communication within the team. We'd like to write and send it to maybe to some chat and says the test failed. Yeah, we have something already set up for monitoring that already piped into our Google Chat and tells us errors are being experienced on this service. We'd like to also now plug that in also for tests to be notified that tests are failing for the production deploy. Yeah, it's a work in progress. Most of the hard parts are there, are already solved. And now it's just making the process more smooth and seamless. Yeah, and integrating it with the Alice flow. And we want to invite the build partners to check this out too. You can build this setup too. I think you've seen the value proposition of having end-to-end tests. It can save you from being woken up in the evening, being told you're losing revenue. But yeah, so this is just the base pieces. It's not something super complicated. We just Playwright for the browser, that drives the bot, a Docker image for running for the setup, cloud build for building the container, and then the artifact registry that stores the image that you deploy to Google Cloud, the secret manager, that is where the refresh token is held for the test user you are going to create, and a cloud run job for the long-lived job for running the actual tests, which scales back to 0 when you're done. And then Alice IAM, the really nice setup for authentication that makes it way easier. This pattern works if you're product user facing portal. You can set this up. Even if you have an internal dashboard, you can still set this up. And again, as I said, it's not super complicated, but it's an easy solution. Of course, you will have to figure out the auth parts, but I think I've given a brief of it. You just need to get that refresh token from a real user and set it up with the Alice IAM. Yeah. For the Alice platform, so of course we have this setup, and with how quick Alice does these things, it would be nice to have this of course like baked into Alice maybe future on. We're still pushing out feature requests even after we are getting some cool stuff. So apologies to Alice team, but we do appreciate your stuff. We do want more. We always want more. And we're happy to share if anyone wants any reference material on this. Yeah. Is this? And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
That's very well done. Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah.
I think we can take one comment or one counter thought before we close off this, but that was really good and really insightful. I see.
No, this is awesome. It's so nice to see all these use cases. And those you had a now and next, the next sort of eventing. I think we can do something cool there, like where we publish these sort of defined events, build events, deploy events, that you can build logic on that. So
Yes,
it's so nice. All the infrastructure and the components and the stuff is just, it's there. It's just now the creativity that stops us from the next
yes,
thing.
yes.
That's cool. Great, guys.
I have, Martha, I have a last like final, if it's okay?
Yeah.
So remember that thing we fixed? Now, you guys can see this now. I just said build it. You can see there. I just said, cool, go and build it. And then it picked up the build commit, started building, let me pull the results. await it, and it's a Claude. In this case, Claude Code's got like a it's got. So I said bold it. Let's just do it like this. And it started bolding, and basically it's got like an internal timer that like it stopped, and you can have a chat, but that timer kicks off again. Okay, cool. And then still in progress. And then it's now cool. It's now bold, now deploying, and now do I want to proceed? Yes or no? You know, like it's pretty cool. It's like all the there's nothing, no buttons coming in here. It's just literally just yeah. I mean, that's okay. Let's just do it. It's pretty cool, man.
Very cool. Okay, guys, folks, this is all we had time for today. Please keep the communication lines open. Most of you are able to reach me. So if you have more questions, other things that you want to request, if you'd like to show us your cool demo, please give me a shout, write me an email. I'm accessible in chat, Teams, wherever the case might be, and let me know. But thank you for your time and happy building.